More than 100,000 American children just like these don't have a permanent home. They're waiting for someone to adopt them. Most aren't the babies we normally associate with adoption. Some are older, some have brothers and sisters who want to stay together. Some have a disability, but they all need a family to help them grow up healthy and happy. And they all need a lot of love. For more information, call the National Adoption Center at 1-800-2-ADOPT. Adoption is easier than you think.
Under the Child Citizenship Act, signed into law on October 30th of 2000, it permitted foreign-born children adopted by American parents to acquire citizenship automatically if they met certain requirements. But the law didn't actually take effect until February 27th of the next year, leaving potentially thousands of parents unaware their children weren't covered and lacked the citizenship requirements needed.
I will continue speaking out for comprehensive immigration reform, both because I think the people who are here, who are raising families and working hard and contributing to our country, deserve a path to citizenship. I have believed that for many years.
Of welcoming immigrants to our shores is central to our way of life. It is in our DNA. We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger, makes us more creative, makes us different. From all these different strands, we make something new here in America. And that's why, if we want to keep attracting the best and the brightest from beyond our shores, we're going to have to fix our immigration system, which is broken.
President Obama and Hillary Clinton support sanctuary cities. They support catch and release on the border. They support visa overstays. They support the release of dangerous criminals from detention. And they support unconstitutional executive amnesty.
I'm living in fear of deportation.
All I could remember from there is just being abused.
I wasn't allowed back into the country.
We've never had a case where an adoptee is able to stay in the States.
I just never imagined to not ever have to go to sleep at night not feeling safe.
I came to find out that I wasn't a citizen.
An estimated 35,000 people who were adopted as children are now living in fear of deportation because of a mix-up in the courts. The Adoptee Citizenship Act is a solution, but as NBC4's Kim Baldonado explains, it's still in the works. Kim.
Yeah, Carolyn, thousands of adults who were adopted as children from other countries by Americans are now living in fear of deportation, and that fear is valid.
That's pretty much it. Oh, fuck. Hope that's not ice. Hold on. Every time the doorbell rings, I always be like, oh, is that them? Is this the day?
Immigration paperwork for international adoptions wasn't always filed accurately in the past, which is why a law passed in 2001 gives automatic citizenship to adoptees from other countries. But that law only applies to people born after 1983. That leaves about 35,000 older adoptees undocumented, including this woman.
I was on a good path. I had a good life, and that's not the situation anymore. I lost my dad. And my dad's legacy was to prepare me as an adult for my life. In the same year that he passed, I basically was stripped of everything of my life. I just wasn't aware of it. In 2001, the Child Citizenship Act was passed into law. I was not aware of this, as many adoptees were not aware of this. I think about that year, it's so significant to my life.
A lot of families, particularly before 2001, believed that when they came into the United States, they adopted their child internationally, that child would become a U.S. citizen. And before 2001, that wasn't the case.
I was adopted back in 1999. At the age of 15 years old, I moved into the United States and I was adopted both by my uncle and my aunt. Then I started going to high school, so I would say that everything was great. I met my ex-wife in high school. It wasn't long enough. She got pregnant. We even went to vacation one time to Mexico after getting married, kind of like a honeymoon vacation. I didn't have issues like to go there on vacation and to come back. I would always use my birth certificate, which was given to me right after the adoption, because I always thought to be like a U.S. citizen. This time, the people at the border mentioned that I wasn't a citizen at all, so I had to go through this naturalization process, which I wasn't quite aware of.
The Social Security office wants me to prove to them that I'm a U.S. citizen. Here's my birth certificate. This is a state amended birth certificate,
I worry right now about whether or not I'm going to be able to keep my driver's license or have the ability to fly domestically anymore.
Like anyone else, I already had a Social Security card, my birth certificate, to get a state ID, a driver's license, so I had no issues to work or get out of the country, to come back.
I have a Social Security number, I have driver's license, I have student loans, I had, everything. I thought I was a citizen.
My wife filed for divorce. She won that case because I couldn't defend myself without taking in consideration that I wasn't a U.S. citizen, and so now I couldn't see my children. I was ordered to pay $100 of child support every week. Oh, so it was horrible. I could remember I was making around $15 per week. I wasn't allowed back into the country until 2014 when I had my tourist visa.
Will be detained until they are removed out of our country and back to the country from which they came. And they'll be brought great distances. We're not dropping them right across. They learned that. President Eisenhower, they'd drop them right across, and they'd come back and across. Then when they flew them to a long distance, all of a sudden that was the end. We will take them great distances, but we will take them to the country where they came from, okay?
So I was deported to Jamaica that I left when I was, 4 or 5 years old. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know the culture. For ICE take me back and forth to court, they talked to me and they were like, we've seen many people like you, and don't waste any more money on lawyers. You're going to get deported. We've never had a case where an adoptee is able to stay in the States. They've all been deported. You're not the first one. So we lived here. My husband didn't have papers to work at the time. I was making $3.78 an hour at a call center. My daughter was here. I couldn't afford to clothe her. I couldn't afford to do anything. So some people from church that are from the States said to me, why don't you take her out of school and send her back to my mom's house? She can live there in the basement and she can get her GED. And that was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do, was to send her back and not be there for her. I can't tell her it's gonna be okay because it's not. I needed a way to survive, for some period of time. I tried to stay with my aunt, but her husband didn't want me there. And because he doesn't like white people, and to him I'm white, to whites I'm black. It's a nightmare.
I think a lot of the struggles that a transracial adoptee goes through is not being able to identify as the same race as their parents, right? So in my case, it was, you know, being Korean, and my parents were white. So the racism that I experienced, you know, I wasn't able to share with them. I wasn't, you know, they weren't able to empathize with me, let alone prep me for what I was about to experience in the world.
I was able to embrace my culture a little bit, and I'm proud of my culture, but obviously there's a huge disconnect for me. I just remember as a child growing up, the Iranian hostage situation was playing out on the news. I remember the first time being aware of where I was from, just because I remember the kids making fun of me, and just saying the silliest thing, you know, like not to come in my house because I would take you hostage and lock you up in my closet. I remember my mom always telling me I would come home and I was always in tears because I was being made fun of.
And on top of that, I couldn't speak English, right? So I had, you know, a lot of like people used to make fun of me when I was a kid, like, you know, from even Asian kids used to make fun of me. Like I felt really like outcasted.
Do we see a higher percentage of individuals with mental health challenges that were adopted? Yes. Do we see a higher percentage of mental health issues in kids who come from other countries? Yes. Can I say the genesis of that is identity development or loss and grief or trauma? Hard to know.
I was born in Jamaica. My childhood wasn't a fairy tale childhood. I suffered a lot of physical and sexual abuse.
What the genesis of that mental health challenge is, it's hard to pinpoint. It could be based on the trauma that they experienced and the brain differences caused by that trauma. It could be related to identity development. It could be related to loss and grief around the birth family. But overall, you know, we do have a higher incidence of mental health issues with our kids.
But I wasn't able to run away because I'm like a walking medical bill, so who was I going to run away to? It was determined that I had malignant cancer that was very aggressive and that hadn't been seen in teenagers before. And it was in my calf. It's not in good shape. It's actually very broken, but I can't afford to get a prosthetic leg. So tell me when you can see it. See it? So yeah, it's like really wobbly. I don't know if you can tell that it moves from side to side. And there's chunks of metal sticking out from here that cut pants and anything that I sit on.
I was born in Korea. At the age of like 2 years old, my biological mother, she decided to just leave me in front of the doorsteps of my uncles. My uncle, he was an alcoholic and he was very abusive. He beat on basically all of us, even my cousin's mom. So I went through a lot of hard stuff there. I wasn't accepted. I still struggle with depression. I still struggle with anxiety. My biggest, anxiety right now is just the fact that I live every day with this uncertainty. So I live every day where I can't plan ahead. So at any given time, I have to say goodbye. Regardless if this bill doesn't cover me or not, or cover people like me, like I'm all for this bill passing. Because like what I'm going through right now, like not only did I have to go through my past, this is just not, I don't want anybody else, I don't want any other adoptees to go through this.
If I met someone who was adopted into this country and then lived here their whole lives, and then as a 30, 40-year-old found out that they didn't have citizenship here, I'd say let's fucking fight this and change the laws.
basically that's what's keeping me alive right now, is that law will pass and they will let us have our citizenship and be able to return so I can be with my sisters. My daughter, she's using her tax return to buy a ticket to come spend the week with me. She'll be here on May 11th.
I think the reason why it's difficult is because people are scared. People don't want to step forward because there's no protection. There's absolutely nothing that would protect you if you step forward and revealed your identity. So important for us to keep telling our stories. Because it's only then that people are going to understand like how we're living.
You know, you're being of so much help, you know, at least just by listening to people like me. I'm fighting to see my children someday again. I'm just a regular person, you know, and I'm doing the best to set an example for my children. So that's why I'm working so hard, because even though I might not have a chance to see them, I still want them to remind me as a person that was always fighting for them, you know, one way or another. On top of that, God blessed me with much more kids. So I have another family of my own. I have a wife, and I'm even providing for them. So, I mean, I'm a lot more stronger, and I'm wiser.
You know, so now what I try to do is I find medication through love from my wife. Her love for me, love has been the best medication for me for my mental health. She knows, and when I share these things with her, she it's like she takes my pain.
I got an email from my congresswoman, so she actually asked to meet me in person to talk about the bill. And so it was one of those things that kind of pulls you out of your mood, and you're like, okay, maybe this is going to happen for us. Maybe we should, you know, be hopeful.